Good afternoon. I'm Jasper Diggs. Imagine a clay vat left in the sun. There's a fish inside. A whole fish, guts and all, packed tightly with salt. And simply left there. Days pass, then weeks. The meat softens, falls apart, and turns into a thick, cloudy liquid. According to all the accounts we have, the smell was horrendous. So foul that it was forbidden to make this concoction within the city limits. Nevertheless, people were willing to pay a fortune for this liquid. It was poured on bread, on meat, on eggs, and diluted in wine. The rich hunted for the best varieties, the poor scrabbled for the cheapest. From the soldier on the far frontier to the emperor in his palace, almost everyone in the Roman world ate it. And now, before you make too much of a face, let me tell you that you've almost certainly eaten something very similar, and quite possibly, quite recently. Today, we're digging up garum, the rotten fish sauce that Rome poured on everything. But as usual, we'll start at the beginning. Contrary to popular belief, it wasn't the Romans who invented it. The sauce came to them from the Greeks. The word garum itself comes from the Greek name for a kind of small fish, the garos. And before the Greeks, the fish had been salted and fermented by the Phoenicians, those indefatigable traders of the Mediterranean. The idea was simple and as old as time. Salt preserved food from spoiling, which meant it could be stored, transported, and sold. So the Romans didn't invent anything. They did something else, something much more Roman. They put it on a mass scale. What the Greeks had as a home-based trade, Rome turned into an entire industry with factories, brands, and fortunes. And this is where the first real person appears in our story. Let's go to Pompeii. This is the city that was buried under the ashes of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD. Among other things, the ashes preserved something amazing for us, not only bodies and houses, but also commerce. Archaeologists have found salting workshops and sealed jars of garum in Pompeii. This is a 2,000-year-old sauce that was preserved by the volcano. And here's the most astonishing part. How did the archaeologists know it was garum and not something else? Partly based on the chemical analysis of the dried sediment at the bottom of the vessels, salt, fish bones, and fish flesh. But most importantly, the inscriptions made with paint on the amphorae have survived. They're called tituli picti. They indicated the type of sauce, its quality, and the name of the merchant. In other words, the scientists didn't speculate. They simply read a 2,000-year-old label, and on one of these labels, a name keeps appearing. Aulus Umbritius Scaurus. This man was, dare I say, the garum magnate of Pompeii. He produced the sauce, he sold it, and he put his own name on the jars. The stamp on the clay says, Scaurus' product, the best quality. Do you see where I'm going with this? It's a trademark, brand, 2,000 years before any advertising. But Scaurus went further. In his mansion, archaeologists discovered a mosaic on the floor. And do you know what it depicts? A jug of garum, with an inscription praising its contents. This man had decorated his own home with an image of his product. He was as proud of the fish slime as some are of their family crest. And to be honest, he had good reason to be proud. Garum had made him rich. And what happened to Scaurus himself when the sky over Pompeii turned black? We don't know. History has not preserved his final hour. All we know is that the house outlived its owner, and 2,000 years later, it's still boasting of his wares from the floor of the main hall. Now let's talk about how this substance was actually produced. They started with fish. Most often it was small and fatty, like anchovies, mackerel, and sardines, and they added the guts of larger fish, which would otherwise have been discarded. They layered everything, generously sprinkled with salt, and left it in the sun. The salt kept the real rot at bay, and the special substances in the fish's insides slowly dissolved everything into liquid, week after week. Imagine a Roman street. You're walking along and suddenly you're hit by a heavy, pungent sea smell that overpowers even the stench of the sewers. You already know, somewhere nearby, is the workshop of Scaurus, or one of his fellow artisans. It was the smell of money, the smell of success, and the smell that made passers-by cross the street. It's no wonder that many city authorities explicitly prohibited making garum within their walls. The finished sauce was strained, resulting in a clear amber and incredibly flavorful liquid. It's worth mentioning how this sauce was used at the table. Imagine a dinner party hosted by a noble Roman. The guests are served boiled fish, but they find it bland and uninteresting. Instead of reaching for a salt shaker, the host pulls out a delicate vial of garum. A few drops transform the dish. It was an ancient equivalent of soy sauce. A drop of concentrated flavor added at the very end. Others went even further and mixed garum with honey, a mixture called enogarum. Just think about the contrast: salty fermented fish with sweet honey. The Romans truly believed that this was the way to enhance the taste of the dish to a divine level. However, garum also had an unexpected reputation. It was considered medicine. Pliny the Elder, our primary source on this topic, a meticulous Roman naturalist, recommended garum for a wide range of ailments, including indigestion, ulcers, dysentery, and even dog bites. Imagine a poor man who is pouring fermented fish liquid on a fresh wound. And he endured it, for he believed that it was a medicine worthy of the emperors themselves. However, not everyone was enthusiastic. The philosopher Seneca disdainfully referred to garum as a precious slurry of rotten fish, and grimaced at the mere thought of it. Thus, even in Rome itself, there were those who shared your doubts, and the price of this slurry varied greatly. The most exquisite variety, Garum sociorum, garum of the allies, was highly valued and compared to expensive perfumes. And at the bottom of this scale was alec, the thick sediment at the bottom of the vat. It was the residue, the byproduct of the process. This was what the poor, the soldiers, and the slaves ate. The same vat fed both the nobleman and the slave, but the nobleman received the clear liquid from the top, while the slave received the slurry from the bottom, and the soldiers spread this habit throughout the world. Archaeologists have found traces of garum in Roman sites in Britain and on the banks of the Rhine, thousands of miles from the warm Mediterranean. As the empire marched, so did the fish sauce. And now, the promised twist. Remember when I said at the beginning that you've almost certainly eaten something similar? I wasn't joking. Think of Southeast Asia. Vietnamese nuoc mam, Thai nam pla are fish sauces made almost exactly like Roman garum. Fish, salt, thyme, and sun. We pour it over our noodles and dip our snacks in them without a second thought. And if you think that's far away, look in your own kitchen cabinet. Worcestershire sauce, the same one that the English pour into their meat and cocktails, contains fermented anchovies. The same principle, the same ancient idea. After all, the tradition of fermenting fish didn't die with Rome. The empire fell, but the habit remained. It just changed names. What the legionnaire called garum, we now call something else, and we enjoy it. And this is where I'd like to stop. It's funny how thin the line is between disgusting and exquisite, between what turns one's nose up and what one pays a fortune for. Often, it's not the object itself that separates them. The object remains the same vat of fermented fish, but only one thing: habit, and the word we use to describe it. The Roman called it garum, and he was proud of it. We call rotten fish, and we call fish sauce, and we eat the latter with pleasure. The fish hasn't changed, we have. So the next time you make a face at something unfamiliar in someone else's kitchen, remember Aulus Umbritius Scaurus, the man who laid a mosaic of a jar of rotten fish on the floor of his house, and was perfectly happy with it. Sometimes the most precious treasure smells like something you'd never expect. I'm Jasper Diggs, and I'll leave you with one question. What will your great-grandchildren call a delicacy that makes you cringe today?